Well, tell me, mama, what's going on? Tell me, darling, what's going on?
Welcome back, everybody. Bacon and Egg Show, episode 27, October 23rd, 2020. Jay, what is going on?
Beautiful day, man. Beautiful day. Ready to talk some horns, good and bad. But good day so far, man. Let's kick it off. What do we got going on?
Let's do it. Yeah, well, let's get caught up before we get into the horns here. I know since the last time we recorded, we were looking at the end of a American League Championship Series.
Yep.
And that came to an end, and the Astros did not advance to the World Series. They lost in Game 7 to Tampa. Any kind of parting words on this baseball season, which for all intents and purposes is done for our interest, but this bizarro season that we had, any reflections on the Astros, what to look forward to? I mean, I think we'll get a little bit deeper into like free agency stuff as the hot stove season starts to come around, but
yeah, man, feeling? I mean, if you, at the beginning of the season, you tell me the Astros make it to the ALCS and a Game 7 in the ALCS, that's one of those things where you're like, man, their window is closing, but you got to feel like that was in the realm of possibility this year. This was just going to be a really good team to make a run at it, and it turned out over the course of a 60 or a shorter regular season, they didn't look like the team that ended up making it to the championship series, but because of that talent on that roster and just the way that the pitching kind of came together there at the right time, and the bats started everything just started to fall together and come back to average, because they were so poor for such a long time. They played like a team that could get to Game 7 of the ALCS, and I thought they might be able to pull off the inevitable, not the inevitable, the near impossible in terms of coming back from a 3-0 deficit. They were only the second team to force the Game 7 there after being down 3-0, but or they were trying to be the second one to do it since Boston, right? But either way, Kerry, it was when they get that far, you want them to go. You want them to get all the way. You want to win it as a fan. But it was a good season in terms of being able to see what they have coming up, which is some of these young arms and some of these bats that played a part. The future looks good.
Yeah, I think you mentioned, like, if you would have asked before the season if losing Game 7 in the ALCS, would you take that like as kind of an acceptable outcome for the end? I think not only would we have taken that before the season, but that's also before we would have found out that Justin Verlander wasn't going to play at all this year, before we found out that Yordan Alvarez wasn't going to play at all this year, before, and just on and on, all those different factors. So in taking that into account as the season went along to end up in Game 7 of the ALCS, I think just it was something that became unexpected. And I mean, in addition to that, I mean, like you said, you get to that point, of course you want to win it. Of course you want to go on to the World Series and have a shot at winning the whole thing. But I think if there's any kind of like bright spot to take out of this, it's what you mentioned, that the young players that came through without losing Verlander, without losing Alvarez, without, all these problems that the team faced, we probably wouldn't have had a 60-game season of seeing Kyle Tucker do what he did. And now he's not coming out of the lineup.
Right.
He's not going back down to Round Rock or Corpus or anything like that. Like, he's set. He is a mainstay in this lineup now. We probably wouldn't have seen what Framber turned into, who looks like a legit number one ace. And also, a bunch of other guys in the bullpen. I think Brooks Raley was a guy that showed well for himself, and he seems to be kind of earning him a spot going forward. But, like, I think if you want to put a bright spin on it, that's probably it. But it's going to be an interesting offseason. It was a weird Game 7 because the situation surrounding it, Charlie Morton on the mound, there was something about, like, there was no hard feelings about it.
Right.
the Astros just got beat, and they got beat by the guy that in a previous game 7 for the Astros, put the team on his back and took him to a World Series. I'm happy for Charlie Morton, man. Like there's no, and it was kind of like, it's one of those things you just tip your cap. You go, good game, and now I really truly hope Tampa goes on to win this World Series, and not just for Charlie Morton, but that's a good organization. It's a good organization. Jay, what are your thoughts on the World Series there?
The Rays are a very, very good team, and they're going to be good. The manager, some people kind of say, well, does he has this certain plan, and he's not going to vary from the plan at all. He sticks to his guns, and it works for him. At least it worked for him this year in this setting with the lineup that he has and the arms that he has. I mean, I think they're going to be a good team for a few years here, just if they keep everybody healthy. The Dodgers, they're anybody but the Dodgers, to be honest. But
one of the better teams money can buy, really.
Yeah, exactly. But they're always there. There always seems to be there at the end, and that's the credit. There were years when the Yankees had the highest payroll and weren't making it to World Series. The Dodgers, the Dodgers they're investing the money. They're getting the result that they want. They're a good team. There's 2 MVPs, former MVPs in the middle of that lineup. They're just up and down. They're all guys that have playoff experience, have done it in big spots, aren't afraid of the big game, aren't afraid of the big moment. So this is going to be a great series against a team in Tampa who doesn't have as many guys that have been there and done it, other than you name a Charlie Morton. But other than that, they haven't done it before in a World Series or in the biggest spot. So it'll be interesting to see. I hope Tampa pulls it out. I'm going to watch the rest of this World Series, just because it's fascinating to me that these short seasons and the way that it turned out. You expect the Dodgers to be there anyway. You expect a team like Houston to be there at the end, but Tampa really took a big leap forward this year. So I was very impressed with them. And you're right, they were just a better team in that 7-game series against Houston.
Yeah, I mean, I know we talked about the errors that were made in the field that kind of helped out Tampa there. I mean, that's how good of a team they are. You cannot have any error. Like, there's the margin of error to defeat them is really, really slim. You have to play essentially perfect to beat that team. And for 2 games in that series, there's the Altuve fielding things really stood out for me. But those are the kinds of things that end up in a 7-game series that's as close as it was, making a difference. But quick question before we move on to the Horns. If the Rays win this series, given how the last 2 World Series losses for the Dodgers have gone, are the Rays going to be implemented in a cheating scandal?
I doubt it, but I hope they pull it off. But I don't think they're that kind of organization that we found out that the Astros were and the Red Sox were. Whatever, it is what it is. But whatever. The thing about that is one other good thing to take out of this Astros season is they've shown, and I know people are still, they're probably still finding a way to cheat. You're always going to be a cheater. But this season, I think, getting through the playoffs the way that they did and really taking it to the Rays to the limit, it shows that, okay, guys, we're for real. We're not, this talent is for real. This is a legit talented ball club. And whether or not people accept that it's not my business. I just think it's foolish not to, it's like with the Patriots. Yeah, they cheated. They always find ways to cheat, to skate the rules and stuff like that but they win and they win and they win. And when you win as much as New England does, you're just a winner. That's it's what it is. So, I mean, I'm glad that the Astros were able to make a statement and make a run in the playoffs at it this year. And we'll see what happens for next year with some guys that are the lineup's going to look different.
Yeah, it is. It is. We'll get into that a little closer to once this
Yeah.
season wraps up and we kind of see how these, free agency starts to shake down and all that, because I think the Astros are in for a lot of action on the market this year, whether that's um, names like Springer and Brantley and Reddick moving on, which opens up holes in the lineup, and then the Astros happen to be active in the market to try to recruit signings in. It's going to be a really interesting offseason. So um, it'll add a little extra something to the winter of sports that we have faced in front of us now. The dark,
Yes.
cold winter of football in the state of Texas. And speaking of that, as a cold front blows into Texas today, the Baylor Bears are coming into Austin tomorrow. Um, they've had
That's quite a metaphor there.
I didn't even think about that. I mean, I mean, cold front, cough front, whatever you want to,
What
So, Jay, you're probably more in tune with the latest on this than I am. What is Baylor's current status with players being out, players not being able to practice? How many players are quarantined? What is going on? I know they've missed 2 weeks of practice. I know that the Oklahoma State game that they had scheduled last weekend was postponed. I do not believe they played the weekend before that. Am I wrong?
No, they haven't. They hadn't seen each other for like 2 weeks. I feel like it was.
But I
So
don't
it's
think they
my
played a game in 3 weeks, right? Does that
right.
sound right to you?
I think there's been that big of a gap since they played a game, and then they had all of the positive tests that went through, and they weren't able to even meet and practice for a long, long time. I believe they've finally been able to meet as a team, at least in groups, and get together and practice at this point. But you have to feel like their inability to prepare on field. The Longhorns should be able to capitalize on that in this situation, but the fact that we haven't seen, and maybe this is what we'll dive into in a little bit, but it's like, what have we seen from the Longhorns that has shown us that they can take advantage of anything for that matter? But Kerry, it's like, how is there a competitive disadvantage to this? And is that just something that during this time of COVID, you have to deal with as a college football program, right? Like, it's just it's the ropes right now, right?
Yeah. The short answer is yeah. Like, this is just something everybody's going to have to deal with. Like, but in terms of like competitive advantage, it's really interesting to me because I feel like it could almost go both ways. On one side, a team that has a new coach, that is a pretty physical team. I mean, you see that Baylor team from last season with Matt Rule, like they've established an identity of being a physical football team. And I know they had COVID cases, but from the sound of it, it doesn't sound like anybody was in any kind of serious shape or anything like that necessarily would have been like a physical detriment to them in that situation. But like, with a new coach, do you wonder if like, is this a time for learning more about schemes, focusing on yourself as a team, get healthy, and I know that's kind of ironic to say when we're talking about them missing practice and games because of COVID, but like, a physical football team, the little banging up injuries that you get. We think about Jake Smith. We think about guys on this Longhorn team that like, we just cannot see consistently on the field. How much would a 3-week break help them? And I know we're talking about like momentum and like, is there rust and all those kinds of things. Well, Texas has been playing mostly every week and they look rusty. They look rustier than the opponents they've been playing. And that's where I wonder, is Baylor going to be fresh? Have they just been itching to get back on the football field for the last few weeks? We've talked about Dave Aranda on this show. We don't quite know what he is yet as a head coach. But if he's a good head coach, if he's a Matt Rule type head coach, then I think Baylor's going to be coming into Austin ready to play. They might not have the physical reps over the last few weeks, but they've been studying, they've been watching film, and they're going to be ready to go out there and hit somebody. My biggest question, so to bring that back around in terms of competitive advantage, Is it an advantage for Texas?
I would think from the perspective of being able to put a hat on somebody and have contact and run plays in real time as you
Yeah.
would run them, to grease up your gears, I guess, if you want to call it that, and just make sure everything's going in the right direction. So, I mean, in that regard, yeah, I would think so. But from what you're saying in terms of being able to have fresh bodies and to be able to focus on, the classroom side of things as opposed to, you know, here's all this stuff, we're going to learn it on the fly. Well, they can actually dig into it and study it and understand the concepts, which seems to be the problem recently with Texas defenders is not understanding concepts, whether that's passing off receivers coming from one zone to the other, or which gap to fill, or not giving up the edge, not being able to be set as the edge and things like that. Those are the sort of schematic things that Texas players make mistakes on a regular basis. So to be able to have that time to just teach concepts, you make a good point. There's a case to be made for that, especially with a new football coach, a new head coach. There is a case to be made there for that being somewhat of an advantage for a Baylor team that, like you said, is physical. They know how to be physical. That's who they are. So that's who they've become. So the physical side of things won't take as long to come back. They've been practicing now for a few days, and they're going to be fresh, man. They're going to be fresh.
Yeah, and this also seems like one of those games where Baylor's probably going to come in with a stripped down kind of scheme too, at least offensively. Charlie Brewer's been around that program for however many years now. They're not rolling in here with like a freshman quarterback that hasn't played against this team or in this stadium or any of those kinds of things. And like, just wonder if because of that lack of practice, it's like, hey, we can run a pretty base offense against that Texas defense and find some success. And I wonder if that's kind of what the game plan is going to be for Baylor coming in. And also, to be fair, I mean, Texas is coming off of a bye week. So it's not like they had some kind of, something like a 5 overtime game just this past Saturday.
Right.
So they've had some time to rest up too. But yeah, just in terms of the COVID things, it's interesting to me about that, the competitive advantage aspect of it. There's a far, there's fewer rolls of film for Texas to watch on Baylor than there is the other way around, right?
That's a fair point. And I just think from a perspective of, okay, as a football player, I would want to be on the field getting those reps.
Yeah.
And so
for sure.
That to me is where this just, I can't, especially for the younger players on that team to get live reps and in-game action and stuff like that. All the games that they've had pushed back or canceled or whatever, those younger players don't have those in-game reps yet. So that's all the more reason that the Texas players that have had these in-game reps now all season long, even the younger ones, to be able to go out there and perform at a high level. And I hope that's what we see on Saturday, is a team that comes out, looks like they've had the best 2 weeks of practice all year, and they're just trying to go 1-0 this week. And they come out on fire and against a team that hasn't had a chance. Like, yeah, they know it in their heads, and they've had a little bit of time to do run through stuff, but they don't have as many in-game reps as with this staff, with this new scheme, with the new head coach, knowing everything that is going into it. So I would hope that Texas can take advantage of that. And it's just, I have no confidence in this team right now, Kerry. I don't have the confidence to even pick them to win this game. It's difficult for me to do that at this point, because what have we seen that has shown us that they're capable of winning a game in the Big 12, besides getting extremely, extremely lucky against Texas Tech?
Yeah. This team, in all honesty, should be 0-3 in the conference. I mean, what happened at Tech, is amazing as it was like you said, extremely, extremely lucky. Like, that is, to have that chain of events occur in order to tie the game, go to overtime, win it, all those things is extremely, like, the probability of that is not good. But it
Yeah.
happened, and they're 1-2 in the conference because they didn't get that same kind of luck versus TCU with Keontae Ingram fumbling at the goal line, or versus Oklahoma, which they kind of had some luck to actually get that thing to overtime. That thing was really should have been a wrap when they were down 14. There with a couple minutes left in the game. But I completely agree. There's nothing about the Tom Herman Texas Longhorns, and this isn't new. This is going back to the beginning of his time. The loss at home to Maryland to open up his tenure, the loss on the road to Maryland the following season. Various things seem to keep reappearing. You know, we talked about the penalty issue this year. There was a penalty issue last year. You think about that call at Iowa State, that penalty late in the game that basically won it for the Cyclones. The discipline thing is not new. In terms of this game tomorrow, I do think it's going to be a close game. Tom Herman and this program has made it a habit of playing down to competition that they should beat.
Yep.
Now, to be fair to them, they also have kind of this habit of playing up to competition. You know, when LSU came to Austin, the Sugar Bowl, these games where people are like, oh man, this is just, you know, Texas just isn't there yet. They always have a way of staying in those games. I mean, think about the year Texas went to USC, the Sam Darnold Trojans that year. That was a good team and went to overtime there with a freshman Sam Ehlinger at quarterback. So it goes both ways, which, I mean, is pretty irritating, honestly. Like it's
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the part about it. It's like, yeah, you love that they can get up for those big games, but they can't get up for Kansas or Baylor
right.
or, you know, I mean, more recently Baylor's been a pretty good football team, but like, you know, there's no reason that let me rephrase. The programs that are successful every single year that you see in the top 10 at the end of the season AP poll every single year, those are the ones that look the same every single week. They have the same look. They have an identity. They do the same thing every week, and you can't stop them from doing it every single week. That's when you know you're an elite program. And that's why Texas is so far away from they're so far away from being considered an elite program. They're miles away because of the inconsistencies that have happened here in the last decade. You know, it's just decade plus. It's inexcusable that, I guess, when we've had this conversation, it's just inexcusable for people to think for any reason that Texas should be in contention for winning anything right now. Because what have they shown you? What has this program shown you in the last 12 plus years that they are capable of winning anything? Like we've been spoiled. We were spoiled by Mac Brown winning 10 games a season for as long as he did. At that point, it was like, oh, Mac is always, he always wins 10, but he always finds a way to lose those other two, you know? It's like,
right.
And now it's like, shit, what would we give for 10 wins a season now? At this point, it's like, really, what the consistency that we knew we were going to have with Mac. Yeah, at the end of it, he lost his shit and didn't stop caring and wasn't the guy that he needed to be for the University of Texas. But Kerry, why would we believe that Texas should contend for anything right now?
We shouldn't. Nobody should.
And we were fooled at the start. Like
Yeah. And it's, you know, you want to have hope, and that's the thing. You hire some, you know, Texas bringing in Tom Herman, there was definitely hope there. It was this, this feeling of, you know, Charlie Strong just wasn't the right guy, but after 3 years, it was still salvageable after Mac Brown left. Here's a guy that has been in the program. He had success at Houston, success at Ohio State, blah, blah, blah. So there was hope there. And that's what I feel like now, the further that this program gets from, we'll just call it the 2009 season, because I know Mac didn't leave till 13, but that's really after that season is when 2010 is when everything just started to crater. But here we are now, 11 years. 11 years on from that kind of sustained success, and it's turning, the feeling is not so much hope anymore as much as it's apathy and just being despondent about where the program's going. There's not this kind of feeling of like, okay, well, if you fire Charlie, this program is still pretty much in the shape that it was that Mac, when Mac was here, and get the train rolling in. No, it's far beyond that. It's the second athletic director to be in charge since DeLoss Dodds left. Like, there's nothing, it's, those days are gone. So that being said, where does this program, and I don't want to go too far off on this, because this is still one of those things we'll kind of see how this plays out with Tom Herman and all that. But to bring your point back around, going into tomorrow's game, if you ask me to trust that Texas is going to show up prepared and ready to, like, mentally focused and prepared to play a football game at the best of their, of their potential, I can't take that deal. Like, if you say, like, can you guarantee that's going to happen? I can't.
No.
And I don't think it will. And that's where I think we've seen enough at this point that you can almost bank on the opposite. They were talented enough to beat Tech.
Yeah. Yeah. I look at this line that I see 9 right now. Texas favored by 9. You telling me that you expect Texas to beat anybody by double digits that's not UTEP?
Vegas thought the same thing about TCU.
Like,
they thought that was a double digit. What was that, 10.5 or something like that for Texas in that game? And
this team does not know how to win.
Nope.
And I don't know if it's partly it's the players, but I put most of this on the coaches. Like, this program doesn't know how to win. There's not a winning culture here anymore. There's just not. And if Tom Herman is going to be the guy, it needs to start this week, and he needs to steamroll Baylor. Okay, that's one. And the rest of the season, come out prepared. The team has to look. This is all eye test for me for the rest of the season. I don't care about the record. I don't even care about what the final record is at this point. It's, do they look like they come out ready to play football? Do they look like a prepared football team? And are they any more disciplined now at the end of the season than they were at the start? That's the only thing that's going to be important for me for Tom Herman in terms of him keeping his job, are those things. Like, because there's no way that this team is going to win every game it should win and lose every game it should lose. And it's so unpredictable. We don't know what's going to happen. Like, they're going to win games. Anyways, what do you think, man? Is this just like?
I honestly think Tom Herman's dead man walking at this point. I think the decision's been made. Maybe not the, like, actual decision, but I think it's become apparent. He had an off season to fire all of his assistants, to hire all new ones, and bind his future to that and say, this is what I need. This is what's going to fix it. Here we go. And nothing has been fixed. And that's how, and the athletic director and the people involved are not stupid. They've been around football programs. Chris Del Conte was at TCU with Gary Patterson. He watched, we talked about, like, Jay Boulware. Like, all of a sudden he became a bad coach.
Right.
Like, that's a guy that had so much success at Oklahoma, recruiting, so much success. Was he the tight ends coach at OU? I think guys like Mark Andrews and these guys that they're just pumping in the league. Like, you mean to tell me that he gets to Texas, he got a job at his alma mater, and now all of a sudden he's a bad coach? Mike Yurcich, we saw what he did at Oklahoma State with those offenses, and he comes to Texas and now all of a sudden he doesn't know how to coach. I mean, Chris Ash, we can talk about, like, his Rutgers head coaching tenure, but that's Rutgers. I mean, how much can you really put on there? Shiano's the only guy that's ever found success at that school. But you mean to tell me that the defenses he had at Ohio State and all these things, he shows up to Texas and forgets how to coach? And people like Chris Del Conte can see that. They know that. He's the one that wrote the checks. He's the one that vetted and interviewed and did all these things and like sealed the deal on it. And nothing's been fixed. So I think to connect this with the Baylor, to connect this with the game tomorrow, I think, the reason I say all this because I do believe that Tom Herman's fate is sealed. Now, whether he's going to get, whether that happens in the middle of the season, if this thing falls apart or after it, I think this is his final season at Texas. I do not see a scenario where he is on the sideline in burnt orange in 2021. And I think the players aren't stupid either. And these players aren't bad players. These are really good recruits. These are players that any other school in the country would love to have on their team. They're highly recruited. There's players that Texas beat out Alabama, Georgia, the who's who for these recruits. These guys didn't forget how to play. They know that what they're capable of. They know that they're better than the record says it is. And it's not that they don't like Tom Herman. He's the head. They committed to play for him at Texas. But I think they see the writing on the wall, and I think they know the end is coming with this regime. So my question to you is, are we going to see a Texas team that's going to go out there and put on a show to try to save their coach? Or is this a Texas team that's going to hang their head? They already feel like the things that they set out to play for this season are unattainable now. And they're going to mope and sleepwalk their way through the rest of the season, just get it over with.
I think Sam standing there, the picture of Sam sort of standing there alone doing the Eyes of Texas thing, it sort of lets me know, and that's something else that we could talk about later if you want. But for me, that picture represents something with this team. Is I think Sam he does truly, the whole bleed orange. The fact that he's quarterback at Texas is a dream come true. I believe all of that stuff about him, and I believe that it truly does hurt him deeply that they haven't won at this university. I don't know that anybody else in that locker room has the same sort of buy-in, the same sort of dedication, the same sort of investment emotionally, mentally, however you want to call it. I feel like if it's not just him, there's not many more in that locker room that have that same passion. And to me, when you get guys that not only are good football players, but they want to give everything for the university. They want to, and it's because the culture at the university is a winning culture to give back to the university that they play for. And until we start seeing that, I don't have any reason to believe that these players are going to go out and try to save their coach's job.
I just think back to the end of Charlie Strong's tenure. When it became clear that this wasn't going to work and that things were over, that was a head coach that by all accounts, everybody in that room loved. All the players talk about how much they love Charlie Strong, how much they care about Charlie Strong, all those things. They still do. I mean, you see like Deshaun Elliott on Twitter talking about, when Herman's losing to OU about like, oh, so, making his comments about like, if y'all thought Charlie was bad, what the hell is this kind of thing? But like, that was a coach that apparently all the players adored and admired. And you saw the performances they put out there towards the end of that season. They quit.
Yep.
So what happens when it's a coach that, does the whole like runny eggs and burnt toast bit, and, if you don't practice a certain way, and, all these things that like, and he's had these assistants. I keep bringing up the whole thing with Drew Maringer, like these guys like that. Obviously none of us have been in the locker room. Mike might have some insight on this with his connections to the program, but like, this just seems like a team that doesn't have the same kind of relationship with its coaching staff than it did under Charlie Strong. And for me, if that's what happened under Charlie Strong, for a guy that they loved, then what are they? Then who in that lock? And that, I think what you mentioned about Sam is really interesting because Sam committed to the university and he committed before Herman was the head coach, and he's here to win games for the university because that's what he cares about. Like, I don't, how many of these players really at this point give a damn what happens to Tom Herman? How many business decisions are we going to start seeing happening on the field on Saturdays? Like a Caden Stearns, someone, or a Sam Cosme, or somebody that has in the very immediate future a lot of money to be made. Not suggesting that those guys and those specific names are going to be playing half speed or anything. I mean, that's not to suggest that like anything like that, but like just in terms of the attitude, how you prepare for the week. Stearns has had some injury issues. If this was a team in contention, maybe he says like, I'm going to be playing every week. Maybe he decides to call it a season, get healthy and doesn't return.
It's a very thin, Herman is on the thinnest of ice, right? And what's going to be, because I still think he's standing on that thin ice. I don't think he's fallen through the ice yet. But what's going to be the thing that's going to break that ice? Is it going to be the players just deciding not to play for him anymore? Is it going to be, is he going to like implode and like, is he going to self-implode here? Is he going to, start doing, flipping off double birds and stuff to the cameras again and showing up and just looking like he doesn't care? Is this going to be, what are we going to see out of this guy? Like I know he wants to be a head coach at a big program, obviously. And he thinks he has, and I'm sure, here's the thing, man, he may grow into a really great head coach later on in his coaching tenure. He's still so young. I think Herman still has the ability to evolve as a coach.
Yeah.
But right now at the University of Texas, and I've said this before, we're not learning on the job anymore at UT. Like it wasn't the place for him to go through growing pains, which is what he's going through right now. He's trying to figure himself out. And in turn, he's lost a locker room trying to do that.
Right.
So I this week, Kerry, what do you think? I mean, what are we in for this week?
I have a feeling this is going to look an awful lot like the TCU game. An awful lot like it. I think I'm not going to believe the penalty issues and the discipline issues are solved until we see that beyond one game. And we still haven't even seen that for one game. But like, it can't just be like, oh, well, they show up and they played clean and disciplined against Baylor. Well, it's fixed. No, I'm not going to believe that's fixed until, probably as long as Herman's the head coach. But for tomorrow, I think it's going to look like the TCU game. I just have a feeling Texas is going to come out flat and uninspired and just not ready to play. I think they're going to be undisciplined and sloppy, and I think that's going to keep Baylor in the game. And Texas very well may win. They had a chance to beat TCU there at the very end before the Ingram fumble. I don't like the spread. I saw 8.5. I still don't like that. I guess if you're asking me to make a pick, I feel like Texas will win this game. But to me, this feels like a coin flip. I feel like it's going to be a 31-28 kind of game. Turnover here, special teams thing here, which has been the story with this team all season. I think I'm going to go 31-28 Texas. I think that it's not going to pass the eye test, though.
Right.
And to me, that's the bigger issue than the win or the loss, especially going into Stillwater next week.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think I had 38-31 Texas stuck in my head since like the Tuesday is when I first thought that, and that's what I'm going to stick with. I think they'll find a way to win, like you said, but that's going to be one of those scores. I feel like they'll be up 38-17 or whatever, and then they'll put in something will happen and they'll give up a couple of scores, and Baylor will have some momentum, and Texas will have to recover an onside kick to keep Baylor from going down and scoring again. That's what I feel like it's going to be. I feel like Texas is a touchdown better than this Baylor team with everything considered, but I do think that they're going to have to hold off Baylor coming back, something crazy like that. That it's going to be another win, but it's going to be like like a big exhale, like a camp. Okay, we did it, but like you said, won't pass the eye test. And as far as I'm concerned, I don't even know what passing the eye test would be at this point for Tom Herman, other than a complete and utter domination. I don't even know what this team would have to do to win me over at this point.
Yeah. And that's where you mentioned Tom Herman being on thin ice, but you don't, he's standing on that ice. And I think when we talk about what it takes or what it would kind of take or what would have to happen for him to find, to break through that ice. I mean, in my mind, I do think that kind of eye test factor is here. If some people say, I think back to, we mentioned this before last year, me and you went to that Tech game, the final home game of the season. People are like, well, if Texas loses this game, Tom Herman's gone. It's like, well, does the look of all this not it shouldn't? And I've heard similar about this week's game. If Texas loses to Baylor this week, he's gone. Well, is that the proper barometer for that? What if they look awful and they fail the eye test miserably but find a way to win? It's like the Kansas game last year.
Yep.
And I think the results are going to play themselves out to where that ice is going to break naturally. I think that even if this team wins tomorrow, which we're both picking them to win.
Yep.
We're both picking them to win. As ugly as it may or it may be, we're both picking them to win. I don't see this team beating Oklahoma State, Iowa State. I think West Virginia is going to put up a pretty good fight with this team. And Kansas State, a trip to Lawrence is on the books. From the sound of everything, he's got to run the table to save his job. Is there anything about how this team has played up to this point and everything that's going on around this program that suggests that is even within the realm of possibility? No.
And if that's what it's going to take, so saying if he loses to Baylor that he's done. Well, yeah, because he has to. If that's your thought process that he has to run the table, well then losing to Baylor would be the last thing, or losing the next one, whatever it is. Oklahoma State is going to absolutely steamroll this team, and I thought they would from the beginning of the season, but now it's just for all completely other different reasons. I thought they would beat Texas, but not like they're going to actually roll them because they're that good of a team. But you have to get this win this week, because you can't play Oklahoma State next week and have to need to win that one. Does that make sense? You have to win this game, period. For many reasons, but you can't go into Oklahoma State coaching for your immediate job, because if he loses this week and loses to Oklahoma State,
and it's done.
It's done. It might be done immediately. They might leave his ass on the what's it called, tarmac or whatever. The where the plane. They may not even board the plane.
Yeah, they can just drop him off at Eskimo Joe's there in Stillwater and just leave him. Oh wait, they're not open. I don't think. Oh, well, see ya. Yeah, but that's what I always get a kick out of that kind of thought process. The whole well, he's got to run the table to save his job, or if he loses this week, he's done. And I think that's a pretty kind of popular thing that makes its rounds on social media and the message boards and all those kinds of things. But that's why I believe his fate's already sealed, because I think the smart people in charge that actually run all this stuff, have been around long enough and are smart enough to evaluate a situation in a leadership role and be able to see something when it's not working. And that's why I think the Chris Del Contes of the world, and whether they're boosters or whatever other, program influencers you want to name, like they've watched a lot of Texas football. They're being around all kinds of people of wealth and status and leadership and all those things. When something's not working, it's just not working. And I think I think it's a nice little thing to say, like, well, if he wins this week, he's earned himself another week. It's like, well, that's a little bit of like, that's something for the, the 995 accounts out there to be able to kind of
Right.
push, like, oh, well, he saved his job this week, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I just don't see, and I know the money thing, that's a different kind of situation we can get into altogether, but like, I just don't see how someone like the athletic director and university president can see everything that's going on around this program, everything, and not look at it and say, like, how can they look at all this and just go, this is working. This is
Right.
working well. This is working
Yeah.
well enough to where we feel like we don't need to make a change. And I don't know.
This is even remotely working well.
Right.
Like, if this is even minutely successful, no. Like, this is an average program that is getting average results from a coach that's getting paid like
Above
he's
average
way
money.
above average. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, man, it's this whole Eyes of Texas thing, man.
Do you want to get it? You want to get into that? You want to talk about that?
Here's the deal. Whatever you feel about it, my whole deal is this should have been taken care of before the season.
Yeah.
Whether or not you make everybody go stand out there, or that you just say you have to be on the field, or you need to go over to the fans and whatever. But nobody's been on the same page. It's just a disaster. No, everybody's given different answers. They're holding meetings here and meetings there and meetings there. And I bet Herman met with the leadership council this week about it, and all that stuff.
I think that's the accountability committee, right?
Oh, right. There were 10. He said, what would he say? There were 10 different accountability committees. That this is what it's gone to. The point for me, Kerry, is it doesn't matter to me whether or not they stand out there and they sing a song or put their horns up, or I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is to not look foolish as a football program, to not look like a complete dumpster fire for all of the national media and everybody around the country to see. It's embarrassing. It's what's going on right now. I don't care how you feel about it one way or the other.
Right.
Not you, but I mean in general, you can feel however you want to feel about this, but there's no denying that this looks like garbage.
It's awful. I mean, yeah, exactly. That's the whole thing. From the jump, at every level of this at the university has been incoherent. There has been no coordination amongst any level for some kind of singular message on this. And I think there's more to this than we maybe know. I think there's probably more to this going on behind the scenes than we're privileged to know, kind of thing. And that's where the whole thing, to connect this with specifically the football program, what was it last week? The story came out about Chris Del Conte when this all came about in the summer, that he approached all the coaches of the fall sports and said, the players don't have to sing the song, but we want the players to be unified and to stay out after their competitions to basically recognize the fans and acknowledge the fans that came. I mean, personally, I think that's kind of hokey. I think that's kind of like stay out there and appreciate the fans kind of thing. Like, come on. Like, I don't really care for that side of it. But a couple of those sports, notably volleyball, was it women's soccer, the other fall sports that have been going on, that's what they've done. They've been coordinated. The players have a singular message. They haven't, they've stood out there unified as a team during the song. They haven't sung it. Those kinds of things. Where the football team has gone the complete opposite direction. And Tom Herman has said, like, well, I support my play, and I do give Tom Herman credit for supporting his players in the decision to not sing the song. Give him credit for that. He has been a good advocate for the players in this regard.
I agree.
But I'm curious about those conversations between Chris Del Conte and Tom Herman. Like, was this and it's just amazing to even talk about this because, like, honestly, deep down, it's like, I don't even give a shit if they sing the song or not.
Nope.
Like, to be sitting here like breaking down, well, did Chris Del Conte tell Tom Herman that he had to do this? Is Tom Herman being insubordinate to Chris Del Conte? What is he telling the players? To me, this whole thing is so absurd.
Yeah.
And how hard is it for an athletic director or the coach or whatever to tell the team, you're either going to be out there together or you're going to go in together? Let's make a decision on this before the season starts, guys. What are we going to do? Like, the fact that this is such a story is mind-boggling to me.
It speaks to the level of leadership at every level of this university.
Well, and then you have the university president going, the song's not going away. It's our school song. It's not going anywhere.
Yeah, just light that fire, fuel that fire, man. Like, no reason to do it other than to appease some rich folks that were probably going to give the money anyway. Like, this is what this is about, and we know this. You follow the money. We say it on this show all the time. Follow the money. Every statement that's come out from university president, the athletic director, it's all with big money donors in mind. This is, make no mistake about it. And they're not happy with what's going on. And I think it's not only the Eyes of Texas thing, it's the optics of how shitty this entire athletic department, like disheveled is a word that comes to mind. Like, it's just, they're embarrassed. That would be a reason for me to not, if I was a rich donor, that would be the reason that I wouldn't give you this money, not because of anything else that's going on over here, but because this is such an embarrassment. Why do I want to put my name on something like that?
Right.
And they better figure it out. They better figure it out quick, because some of these guys are just going to get tired of it. They're going to get tired of losing. They're going to get tired of their other rich buddies asking them why they're giving so much money to a losing football program and a losing culture. And, like, that stuff can start to dry up. It's just, there's so many changes that need to come around this program. And the way that you described it earlier, these players didn't forget how to play. These assistant coaches up and down the lineup didn't forget how to coach. It all has one common denominator, and it's Tom Herman.
Well, on that, just on speaking about that now, and we talk about this program in this, the sense that we do is like this, behemoth program. I mean, could we apply that to Tom Herman? That same thinking? Can we apply? I mean, is that a case where is that something where we go, Tom Herman didn't forget how to coach. He's had success. I mean, I know he's had, like the headbutts and giving the birds and all those kind of, like, he's had his things, but could you apply that to Tom Herman? Is the program the common denominator here?
It's interesting.
Because like Charlie Strong had success. He won national titles at Florida. He had success at Louisville. I know, Teddy Bridgewater and those kinds of things that he had there, but like, Nick Saban sure felt like he was more than adequate to come join his staff at Bama. And I know South Florida didn't work out, but like, to the bigger picture here, and me and you have had this discussion before. I don't know if we've quite got into it on this show, but about this idea of Texas as the blue blood, like the ultimate blue blood.
Right.
When you look at the numbers and you look at the results over decades, it doesn't add up. And I mean, I know this is kind of a big picture, big grander discussion here, but like, is this the program that's the problem? Is that the common denominator? That whoever comes into this program, you might even be able to say that for basketball too. The department is the problem. The program is the problem. For whatever reason, whatever kind of curses and voodoo and whatever you want to say, it's like they just forget how to coach. They forget how to play. They forget, like, things just go wrong.
So what you're saying is Mac Brown, if that's the scenario, then Mac Brown was a good enough, and Mac Brown and Vince Young, I guess, were good enough to overcome everything that is the Texas football program.
Yes. 100%.
Because the way that we talk about Sam and how he would be in that, with a super season this year, like if they would have had the season that we forecasted them to coming in, then we would have considered Sam to be in that upper tier of quarterbacks. But now it's like, he's just not as good as Vince, because Vince is a once in a generational talent. And Sam, while he's super talented and pours everything he has into this university, he couldn't overcome everything of what this program. He's just not that great. Like maybe at another program he would have had more success, but at a Texas, because of the program, the culture, the environment, everything that's here now, he just couldn't overcome that. Like that's
perhaps. I mean, I think it's hard to say, like, on an individual player basis, like, Colt McCoy was a hit away potentially from winning a national title at Texas. Mm-hmm. Which I'd argue that he didn't have near the weapons on that offense that Sam Ehlinger's had. I mean, when you're throwing to Dan Buckner in the national title game.
Right. Nothing against Dan Buckner. I'm sure he's a nice gentleman. But
yeah. Actually, I think I heard he was a dick, but he transferred out and went to somewhere. But that's for a different day.
That's right. Did he go to Arizona?
Arizona? Yeah.
Yeah. Never mind. Screw that guy. No.
Yeah. So, but like James Kirkendall, some of those guys. Like I'd argue that Colt McCoy, overcame more of those problems than but that's when we start breaking it down to like a micro like player thing, but like just the history of the program and over the decades, Texas has just not lived up to the reputation that, whether you want to say that that's what the college football world places on the importance it places on Texas, or whether it's self-placed importance, whatever it may be, Texas just has not lived up to that reputation. And I don't know. It's just, we've seen so many good coaches, so many good players, these things. We talk about how we see these guys on Sunday, sitting there watching Charles Omenihu as a starter opposite JJ Watt on the Houston Texans D line. That was a guy that was getting rotated in and out for like situational plays by two head coaches. Now, by multiple head coaches. So that wasn't just a Tom Herman thing.
Yeah.
But like, it's rhetorical. I mean, there's obviously, if one of us had the answer for it, I think someone else would have the answer for it and like know how to fix this thing. But I just don't. It does make me really wonder about, like, well, what if you do fire Tom Herman? And what if Texas does go get somebody like Urban Meyer? is that kind of the true test of someone that could overcome whatever kind of
Yeah.
inherent disadvantages or weird shit that goes on with this program? Like if Urban Meyer came to Texas in 4 or 5 years, bombs out, and doesn't even get close to winning a national title, you can kind of go, oh, maybe there's
Well,
something to this. I don't know.
and maybe, if this really just speaks to the leadership and the administration of the school making a lot of mistakes and putting the wrong people in power and things like that to get to the point that we were in. And this is not just, this is over decades and decades, but the thought that it could be the ultimate litmus test, would that stop you from doing it? Because like, it's like,
Oh, no.
if you hire Urban Meyer and he fails, it's like, okay, who the hell is going to come in here and be successful then? Like that, because that, to me, that's what that says. If you hire Urban Meyer and he can't
Major
come in here and
Applewhite.
win, jeez, Major.
You know that would be the follow-up hire. Well, now we got to bring it back around. We got to get it back in the family.
Gotta bring in the Longhorn that knows how to be a Longhorn, that won as a Longhorn, that gave everything for the university. Oh God, it would be Major, wouldn't it? Oh man, dude, that's quite a concept to talk about it being the program and not anything else. Like, but to be honest with you, we have to take a long, hard look at this and really examine if the only reason that Texas is where they are is because of Darrell Royal, Mac Brown, and money. Because like, as much money as the program brings in, if this program wasn't first in revenue, if this program was 51st, I feel like nobody would give a shit about this university. Like, but there's a reason why Texas is first. I get that.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
saying, like, there's so much money that pours in here. There's so many people that are attracted to the brand, and I just don't understand why at this point. Like, what is drawing somebody to invest themselves emotionally into this athletic department when all they've done year after year after year after year after year is disappoint you? Like, it's like I can't identify with that. Like, I'm not saying I won't watch these games. I'm not saying that I'm not interested in this team being, I want them to be successful, of course. But
yeah, of course.
like, it's just like, I can't invest that sort of emotional energy into this in anything. I've given up on basketball a long time ago, but I can't emotionally invest in this, anything to do with this athletic department anymore, because I just can't deal with, knowing that in the end, it's just going to be a big slap in the face, which is what Tom Herman turned out to be. Charlie Strong turned out to, by all accounts, whatever kind of guy you think he is, or he was, or
Yeah.
it would just turn out to be a huge mistake of a hire. And that, to me, like, if I'm going to continue to invest, I want to at least pass the eye test in terms of knowing what the ceiling is, and knowing that the ceiling of this could be a national championship. When you know the ceiling of that is 4th place in your conference, I'm not investing in. I'm not going to emotionally invest in you.
No, it's all really interesting. It's fascinating to me. Just and it sounds like there's a mirror image of this Texas program up in Ann Arbor, Michigan. In that, Lloyd Carr just wasn't cutting it anymore. Those 10 games a year just weren't good enough. And so, they go through Rich Rodriguez, they go through Brady Hoke. All right, here is the absolute home run. This will pay off. This is it. This is what's going to return Michigan back to glory. And to be honest, I think everybody thought the same thing with Jim Harbaugh. Michigan guy, had success at Stanford, took the 49ers to a Super Bowl. I mean, everything, the resume, all of it. He still hasn't beaten Ohio State. it sounds like he's on thin ice there kind of thing, but it almost sounds like they're what Texas could frighteningly be in a few years, where the apathy is like, it's not even worth the money to fire Jim Harbaugh. We just know what we're going to get this season.
Yeah.
We just don't care.
Well, again, it's like that was the home run hire. That was the biggest hire, the hire of all hires.
Exactly.
There was no way this was going to fail.
Exactly.
There was no way. And then you look at it, and like you said, he's like 0-6, 0-7, whatever it is against Ohio State. And they haven't done anything amounting to anything in his tenure. So it's like, oh man, this was supposed to be the one that
This was going to fix it all. This is going to
fix
do
it all, and that's
Yep.
it. So, like, is this program fixable? And you kind of look at Texas in the same regard at this point.
Now, that doesn't mean that Texas shouldn't go after someone like Urban Meyer in this situation. But
Right.
I mean, is it beyond the realm of possibility to see? I mean, that's what the mirror image of that Jim Harbaugh situation would be: Urban Meyer taking the Texas job, and after 5 years, he's 1-4 against OU. He hasn't won a Big 12 championship, and Texas has won 8-9 games here and there, but like, because that's basically what Harbaugh has done. It would be like Urban Meyer coming to Texas. I know the connections between the school aren't the same that with Jim Harbaugh in Michigan, but like, if I know we're broadcasting too much into the future here, but like Urban Meyer coming in and going 0-4, 0-5 against OU and not making a
Right.
playoff is just like, that's the equivalent of what Michigan fans were expecting with Jim Harbaugh. And I just feel like there's a lot of similarities between the two programs and the way that whether the college football world or themselves view their place in the grand scheme of all of this.
It's fitting because right now on the screen I have pulled up, I have the CBS Sports HQ app up, and it's the thing that's running right now is, could this be last dance for Jim Harbaugh? It's only fitting. It's perfect. I mean, that segue, Kerry, that's why they pay you the big bucks, right?
That's why I'm I'm waiting on the check.
Oh yeah, me too. Yeah.
I got one of those emails that went to the spam folder that was like, if you give us your direct deposit info and your PIN number and all those kinds of things, like money, all kinds of fortunes going to be heading your way. So like, I did that. I figured it had something to do with the show.
That's it. Right.
Yeah. It was some Burmese prince or something like that. But like,
perfect. That was
so yeah. I'm sure we have listeners in Myanmar and that are supporting it. So I assume that's what it is. I haven't checked my bank account since.
I believe Myanmar is, and now we're completely off the rails. I believe Myanmar is one of the only other countries in the world to use the standard measurement system and not the metric.
Ooh, that's fascinating if that's the case.
We're going to have to look that up. We'll do it another time. Okay.
All right. That's what they call in the industry a teaser for next show. So our viewers out there that don't Google that, you can find out.
Yeah,
next week.
If you're still hanging on at this point in the show, thank you for listening to our Myanmar Weekly segment. Yes, yeah, we had to retire Pandemic Weekly, sort of, but yeah, now, anyways, yeah.
Well,
that's great,
Jay. This has been a good discussion. I'd say we can get into a lot of these bowls being canceled today, but who cares?
Yeah. At this point, is Texas even gonna? Never mind.
Well, no, you heard that every team is bowl eligible this year.
Oh my! So we're gonna have like teams that won 2 games playing in the bowl. That's just super.
Bowls can now just kind of pick who they want to.
Everybody gets a trophy.
Yeah. So the Culligan Holiday Bowl, the Pacific Life Holiday Bowl, or whatever it is these days, is being canceled. There was a whole list of them that got the axe today, but who gives a shit? Who cares?
I can't wait to watch the Poulon Weed Eater Bowl with UTEP versus Dartmouth or whatever. I don't know. It's going to end up being
University of
crazy
Phoenix. Yeah.
Jesus.
In today's Cheez-It toilet paper bowl, we have Southern New Hampshire University versus Western Governors University.
I figured National American University would have fit its way in there at some
Oh
point.
yeah,
but
you know,
they're-
they play in a different
they're-
conference, so they couldn't qualify
Oh.
for the Cheez-It toilet paper bowl.
Jeez.
So
Oh man. Let's get
yeah,
outta
and we
here.
don't need to get
Let's-
into Iowa State, Oklahoma
No.
State either. That's the only other thing I had on the list today. We'll preview Oklahoma State next week.
Oh man, this is either gonna be Gary. We may, if you can imagine our mood being worse when we're talking about the Longhorns. Let's just see what happens if they don't pull this off this week. Man, we both predict that the Horns are gonna pull it off, but man, it's just everything's a coin flip with these guys.
Honestly, whether they win that close game or lose the close game, I don't know if my mood's gonna be all that different because of that eye test thing. You know,
Yeah.
like I know we've hit this one before, but like the Kansas game last year, I cannot stop harping on how bad that game was.
Yeah.
And then the reaction, like from like the official social media accounts or like these things about like, Dicker with the big kick, what a win! All these things to beat Kansas.
Yeah.
And like it's like,
Syncing
did
up the kick
anybody
to-
watch that game?
Yeah, syncing up the kick to "My Heart Will Go On" by Celine Dion. or
Yeah.
whatever it is. And it's just like that was Kansas. Guys.
At home.
It's the Big 12. Oh,
It is. Well, should be intramurals.
go play intramurals, brother.
Well, it's been a good one this week. It's always a pleasure. Wish the team was playing a little bit better, but glad we can get out there and have this discussion. And
We're gonna watch the games and we're gonna talk about it no matter what. So, well, maybe we'll listen. I don't know. We'll take in the games.
I'm going to start with just a quarter.
Okay. All right.
I'm going to start with the first quarter. I'm going to see how the first quarter goes, and I'm going to base my viewing off of that. At the end of the first quarter, I'll decide like maybe I'll stick with this, and then I'll go to the second quarter, and I'm just going to play it that way until, that way I don't sit there and after 4 quarters go, I wasted my entire Saturday with this. We'll know what we're going to get in the first quarter.
I agree. Let's hope they show out, man.
We'll see.
Yeah.
We shall
Not
see.
counting on it.
All right. Well, you got anything else, Jay? Anything else you want to add for
No,
we call
let's get out of here, man. No, I'm all good on. I think that's a good that little tangent that we just took on that ride that we took for the last 15 minutes. I think or so. I think that's far enough.
Yeah, our Texas rants are starting to get very McConaughey-esque with
Yeah,
we start going
man.
down some real winding, curving roads and flat circles, and
Hey, did you pick up your copy of Green Lights yet, man?
I've pre-ordered 5.
I signed the first 50 copies that went out today, man. All right, thank you. Maybe next time be a little cooler if we took our shirts off. Yeah.
He's been doing like the whole media blitz thing this week too. Like he's been all over every podcast, every show, everything. How did we not get McConaughey on this like to talk about green lights and then also ask him a few questions and all,
Yeah, I'm disappointed. I'm gonna have to talk to the production team about that. Just really, really a missed opportunity to have him on.
I think somebody should lose their job over this actually.
Yeah, they might. It's highly possible somebody's getting axed. This may be a different looking show when you tune in next week, folks. Okay.
I think it's either the Owl or Mr. Sacco. I think it's one of their fault.
I think you know better than the badmouth Mr. Sacco.
I didn't say it was him.
Hey,
Just trying to be fair here.
all right.
Just trying to be fair. I don't want to put
You
it all on
didn't
the Owl. Look at those eyes. I mean, the Owl.
You didn't mean it, dude.
Oh man. Well, it's been a good one. It's been fun. Let's try to do it again next week. We'll see how they look tomorrow. So
Sounds good, man.
all right. Thanks everybody. Thanks for watching.
ATX represent Fatal, baby.